It's that time again. The annual conference of the American Society of Ag Consultants, otherwise known as ASAC, is going to be held in Fort Myers, Florida, this November 4th and 5th. Kurt Covington is one of 9 professionals who will address the conference. The other speakers who will cover a wide range of topics represent Florida Farm Bureau, Florida Citrus Commission, University of Tennessee Institute of Agriculture, National Ag Law Center, Risk Mitigators and Advisors, Tyler Associates, as well as the lead economist for dairy at CoBank, and myself, Chrissy Wozniak from North American Ag. The day and a half of presentations will be followed by ag tours on Tuesday afternoon at Echo Farms, one of my favorite places here in Fort Myers. Attendees will experience farming at its most creative, with unique demonstrations, plants, and techniques being used to help farmers and urban gardeners in developing countries. A second tour at Echo will showcase simple technologies that can improve food, water, and shelter for millions of people. A third tour of a hydroponic grower is also being planned. For more information and to register, visit www.agconsultants.org. That's www.agconsultants.org. See you there. Welcome to North American Ag Spotlight. I'm Chrissy Wozniak. My guest today is a visionary leader who has seamlessly navigated the realms of military service, corporate management, and agriculture innovation. Over his 30-year career as a naval officer, he visited strife-torn and underserved regions, which cultivated a profound understanding of agriculture's global significance. This insight, combined with his extensive experience in roles at several corporate giants, culminated in the founding of Harvest Returns. Today, we're going to discuss his fascinating journey and the role in connecting investors with agriculture. From Fort Worth, Texas, I would like to welcome CEO and founder of Harvest Returns, Chris Rawley. Welcome, Chris, and thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm very glad to be with you, Chrissy. Thanks.
So first of all, tell me about your background.
Yeah, so I probably, unlike a lot of guests, I didn't grow up in a farm. Don't have much of an ag background until very recently in my life. My family, on the other hand, is 5th generation Texans and pioneers, and they were in farming and had a great grandfather who was a large animal vet. So I do have, I guess, some DNA in the farming business, but myself, no, I grew up in North Dallas. Kind of the closest I ever got to a farm was my grandparents had some chickens, and I'd go and help with the eggs and things like that. But after my military career, so I went to Texas A&M, surrounded myself with a bunch of Aggies, went in the military, served as a naval officer for both active and reserve for quite a long time, 30 years, as a matter of fact. I did spend a lot of time traveling all around the world, and I went to places like Somalia, throughout Africa, Iraq, Afghanistan, where I saw people who were very, very poor, who didn't have the blessings that we take for granted, especially in the realm of food, where we can go to a big supermarket and get fresh produce that shouldn't be available 24/7, 365. But because we have this global agriculture system, we're able to get it. But travels, I became much more interested in farming and agriculture. And about 10 years ago, I moved out back to Texas in a somewhat rural area. So I drove past these large ranches every day and looked and saw cattle. And I became interested in how people were making money doing that. And with some investment background, some technology background, decided that at some point I wanted to invest in a farm, but I really didn't have that know-how. Didn't have enough capital to do it, didn't have that farming background like I think many farmers today do. They come from multi-generational farming backgrounds. And so I kind of went about it backwards. I decided to start a platform where people like me could invest in farms, and brought on a partner, Austin Manis. He did have some experience growing up working on his family farms as a youngster, also went to A&M. We'd known each other, family friends for a long time, and he had just gotten out of the military not too far before that. So back in 2016, we started putting the pieces together to create this platform to bring together investors with producers. And we initially had a focus exclusively on ag producers. And as we started to kind of dig into it and better understand the ag finance system and agriculture businesses, we saw there was also a gap for agribusinesses, people, along the value chain besides the producers. And many of the producers that we work with, their business is reliant on more vertical integration of what they're doing. So it's not just the growing side, but it's capturing some of the value-added processes all the way to the direct-to-consumer side. And so we begin to develop our knowledge in this space. Same time, we've got to build a stable of investors because we want to fund these deals. So we have about 14,000 investors now that are registered on the platform. And we've raised something like $32 million and invested in a bunch of farms and ranches and agribusinesses and even some early stage agriculture technology, ag tech startups. And it's been going pretty well. People, at first, we thought we'd have a hard time attracting the farmers, but we found out that the problem was kind of the opposite side, where it's more of educating investors on why they should invest in agriculture. The farmers are coming to us. The success that we've had in raising capital brings many more producers to the table, and it just comes down to finding the right deal to put in front of the right investors and create sort of a win-win situation.
Right. Yeah. That's awesome. And what exactly is Harvest Returns? You explained, how you're built, how you put it together. But explain the mission and the vision in connecting investors with agriculture.
Yeah. So the main reason we want to do this is because we realize that there's a number of small, mid-sized, underserved farmers and producers in agriculture businesses. We're not talking about the Cargills and the ADMs and the Bears, the small producers, in many cases, first-time farmers or maybe multi-generational farmers where there was a grandparents to have the land and then maybe it skipped a generation. They didn't want anything to do with farming and now they've got grandchildren and that couple has access to land, but they don't have any other resources and they want to start. For example, we've done this many times with ranches. They need to grow their herd. They need to buy the infrastructure to get to some kind of scale to make money. So the mission is connect those types of folks with investors who want to diversify their portfolio, who want to better connect to agriculture and the food system. And the way we do that is by essentially putting these two together. Farmers come to us. They've got a business plan. They've got a team in place. They've got a vision for their own farm, how they want to grow it or expand it or even start it. And then we go through all the financial details, do a lot of due diligence, sort of underwrite the deal is one way to put it. And then we put it in front of our investors and they decide how much they're going to invest. And most of our investors are fairly high net people. The smallest investments we do are $5,000, and that can range all the way up to $500,000. We pool those checks together and then we write a larger check to the farmers, and that check may range from a few $100,000 to a few $1 million. And we've done debt, we've done equity, so different structures of deals, whatever tends to work out best between the farmers and the investors.
Yeah, interesting. And I'm intrigued by your experience in your military career. So how did that career path lead you to appreciate the significance of farming, agriculture, and investing and put it together?
Yeah, a couple different aspects. One, when you're in the military, you work with a lot of different types of people. Depending on what your job is, you work with, a team, and you get to recognize high-performing teams and teams that need leadership. I was fortunate that I worked with some amazing teams and had some amazing leaders that I was able to work for. So you get these team dynamics, and of course we have that on our own team, our small team at Harvest Returns, and we see that in some of the producers we work with, where they've got maybe a husband and wife, maybe children involved, maybe multi-generational, and then all the other people they're using, the CPAs and lawyers and their vendors, and we see what that team system looks like. The other aspect that has benefited me in this job of my military career was the management of risk. So when we talk about risk in farming and investing, there's kind of a gap. It's important for both sides of that equation to understand the risk. So for the farmer, they know their general risk. They know they've got some. Maybe they're in commodities. Maybe there's market risk. Price of cattle is here. Price of cattle moves up and down, and where we are in that market cycle. Obviously, they have weather risk they've got to contend with, and pest, and those sorts of things that are nonstop problems and challenges for farmers, and they have to understand how to mitigate those risks. Whether they're doing hedging or whether they've got crop insurance or those sorts of things. But there's other, from an investor perspective, it's important to understand what are those agriculture specific risks, but there's also risks like financing and execution, what we call execution risks. So person comes to me with a business plan, and one of the things that we're looking at is what their track record is, how well they can do what they say they're going to do. So they may have a really nice, beautiful business plan, and they get it out in front of our investors, and it looks really good, and it turns out they just are not capable of executing that business plan. That happens. So you're trying to look at the whole person and the whole team and understanding that they're capable of doing what they say they're doing. On the other hand, sometimes we see really amazing, experienced producers, and they know what they're doing. They know their numbers, they know that, but they don't know how to present it. So they don't know how to put that into a format that an investor might be comfortable with. So we can help with that as well. And again, we're trying to create a situation where everyone understands the risk, everyone acknowledges the risk, and identifying those risks, and then figuring out how to mitigate that. And in the military, I experience jumping out of planes and stuff blowing up, and war zones and helicopter operations and small boats and all those things that are very risky operations. So we got really good at developing or identifying, understanding risk, and looking at the measures to mitigate them.
Wow, fascinating. So how do you assess the potential of the farm or agriculture project? You're seeing it on paper, but what are those steps you're going through?
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to, we put a lot of, the numbers are very important, and the way that the numbers are presented, and making sure that the producer has confidence in their numbers and knows how they're going to get there. But the producers themselves, we're doing typical things that a bank might do in underwriting, like background checks and things like that. But we see in the venture capital world, there's this thing called pattern recognition. And so you see a deal over and over and over again. And even though all of our deals are very unique, and the types of operations we do are vary quite a bit, you start to see these patterns in the way people talk to you and the way that they present themselves. And you start to see, we have learned some painful mistakes and expensive mistakes. But we see a lot of deals. We probably see 30 projects come in front of us every month. And so we start to see patterns of, this could be a successful deal, and this is probably not going to work. Or maybe this is really, there's a lot of potential to this. So we'll spend some time, especially if it's a young farmer, we'll do some mentoring, and then we'll tell them to come back and, give them a little bit of homework. And then they may come back in 3 months or 3 years even. We've seen people put that much work into their business plans. They come back to us, and then they'll have a successful raise on the platform, and be able to raise the capital they need.
Oh yeah, that's a really great option. So I guess those are some of the reasons why a farmer would go to you instead of to a bank. What are some other reasons?
Yeah, so banks, obviously the banking industry is very highly regulated. And there's some good reasons for that. There's some bad reasons for that. And part of it is because that's just what's happened over time as we've had these economic cycles. Not a lot of it have to do with agriculture, but these regulations still impact the ag credit unions and the ag financing. And those regulations put a lot of limits, left and right limits on what a bank can do. And so if you're a producer and you go to a bank, and if you're just 1 centimeter out of those limits, you're probably not going to get your loan funded. We we have obviously we have regulations. We have Securities and Exchange Commission regulations. We got to comply with the IRS and a bunch of other regulations. But because we're creative in the way we do deals, our limits are way out here. They're not like this. So we can, and we also have a lot of tools in our toolkit that we can do debt and we can do equity and we can combine the two and we can bring other investors in and we can work with, you know, we're trying to get to a yes. I think most banks tend to get to a no with farmers.
Yeah.
We're trying to get to a yes.
Wow.
And again, that's not because those bankers aren't high integrity and trying to do what they are. They just got a lot of restraints on the banking system that we don't have.
Yeah, that makes sense. And do you have any success stories you can share about a producer that's really just rocked it?
Yeah. Well, we call these things offering verticals. So we have sort of specialties. We do just about anything except for row crops, but we're starting to have some conversations with row crops. And the reason we don't really do row crops is because that's a very mature. The finance system for ag is very mature because it's the biggest industry. So if you're a corn guy or a soy guy or whatever, there's plenty of ways you can get capital. And if you're a regenerative rancher, and you present this kind of interesting business plan, that may not get funded. So some of the success stories revolve around those regenerative farmers. There's a company out in the West Coast called Perennial Pastures. Guy named Kevin Muno. He used to be a professional baseball player, and then decided he wanted to become a rancher. And he's ranching on leased government land, and he continues to just do very, very well. He's created this really interesting direct-to-consumer brand, Perennial Pastures. And a lot of the producers that we work with that are really successful are doing something just a little different. They're not like, hey, I'm a cow-calf person. Okay, well, there's a lot of cow-calf people. What makes you different? So Perennial Pastures, many of our cattle producers are doing really, really well. The farms that are focusing on the consumer, and they see how their product is not just one. It's not just whoever's buying their products. It's not just the processor or the packer. It's all the way to the consumer. The people that understand that tend to do better than the people that are just like, hey, I just need to make another sale to up the value chain, one level up. Right. Because having that full knowledge of the food system helps them produce better products that are responsive to consumer needs. And that's really what drives all this, is what do the consumers want right now?
Yeah. So just like in any industry across the nation or across the world, right? Yeah. Just because we're the oldest industry doesn't mean that there's not room for more ideas and
for sure,
being smart about it. Yeah, that's cool. So when you first tried to invest in your own farm, what kind of challenges did you come across not having that experience from a child?
Yeah. So just about everything.
Yeah.
First of all, I didn't know enough about the industry to know what I wanted to do. What type of, I knew I didn't have those skills. If you threw a bunch of heifers in front of me, I would have no idea, how to take care of them. Or if it was, put me in a $500,000 combine or something, that's probably cheap these days, but a combine, I wouldn't know where to start, because I just didn't have that education or that experience, that upbringing. So knowledge was the biggest probably issue.
Right.
Like I said, the second was capital. Once I started to learn about agriculture, you see that there's some scale. There's hobby farmers, and then there's business people, right? And there's a lot of great, successful hobby farmers that are out there, and they're growing food that, they feed their family, and they go to a farmer's market on Saturday and they sell a little bit and they make a little bit of money, but they've got, they're each got a job in town, right? So that's kind of where we put the hobby farmers. And then there's the larger scale, to get to the scale that can really be profitable. and more for us, not only probable, but to be able to, pay some sort of return to our investors. That's a different situation. So for me, I didn't have those things. I didn't have the knowledge, didn't have the upfront capital, had some, I was very blessed to have a successful real estate business and had made some money that I used to fund this company. But had I gone and all in and bought a farm, I would have a lot of risk in that single farm. So what we decided to do was build something where people could invest in this asset class and invest smaller amounts and spread their risk around. So can invest in a cattle operation, can invest in a vineyard, can invest a little bit in in an orchard, whatever it is, and spread your money around $5,000, $2,000, $15,000, and kind of create a portfolio in agriculture that does a lot of good work with your money. So you're helping these farmers start, and your money with a lot of other people's money is doing really amazing things on some of these farms. And it's creating jobs, it's creating healthy food, it's keeping people in the business of farming. So it's keeping that land in the family. There's so many positives to what we do, or at least what we're trying to do to kind of help agriculture and make people think a little differently, both on the farming side and the investing side. Is like, you don't just have to go to your only option is not that credit union that your father went to down the road. It's, you've got a pool of of investors all over the country that can help you meet your goals and grow in your operation.
Yeah, I love that. And in the industry, we talk a lot about how do we reach consumer. This is kind of a way for consumers to reach us. So I really like this, and the marketing of that could really help reach those consumers too, and build that understanding of where their food comes from. I think this is just really cool.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And the way we do that is education.
Yeah.
On both sides, but on the investor side, making them aware there's this whole world of farming that they take for granted. They don't know, they think their chocolate milk comes from brown cows.
Right.
Whatever the extreme anecdote you want to use is, there's a very strong disconnect in modern society between producers and the consumers. And we want to kind of close that gap. And one way to do that is to give you a vested interest by putting your money where your mouth is, literally.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. And you have an extensive experience in corporate management roles. So how has that background influenced your approach to ag investment?
Yeah, some of it goes to that risk management piece and knowing, how to finance and how to read a business plan and how to, read a profit and loss statement and those sorts of things, and understand numbers. Because most of my background was in marketing / finance. So that's clearly a big part of it is just to be able to look at a business plan and make a very quick determination on, like, okay, is there some there? And then, as I said, that kind of combined with being able to evaluate the people in the producer situation and see if this is a person with integrity, this is a person that knows how to execute, this is a person who's got a very, not just an idea, but a way to get to make their vision happen. And what amazes me, constantly is just the people that come to us and they have all those. You would think that they are maybe a rare breed, but the people that find us seem to be like, oh, there's some really solid people. We do some really amazing things, and things you would never even think about. A lot of, there's a whole sustainability regen and whatever the buzzword is of the day. And we like that, and our investors like that, but it's beyond just that. It's keeping agriculture as a viable industry. And that's what really drives and motivates us.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so could you elaborate more on your role as angel investor in early stage agriculture, food companies? And what do you seek in these startups, since there's nothing that you can look behind?
Yeah. So in a lot of, it's the same thing. Some of those additional parts of risk come into place, the execution risk. So is this a team? Maybe this is maybe they're young, but have they done anything in their lives that leads me to believe that they can do what they say they're doing with this
Right.
company? Um, is there a consumer demand for what they're doing? So we've seen some really interesting ideas, and some of those ideas we put in front of our investors, and the investors just didn't sort of buy off on it because it what they were, even though what they were doing was a unique idea, it didn't seem like something that farmers actually were going to use. And with agriculture technology, ag is a very conservative industry, right? We all know that. So if you're putting something new in front of that producer, you've got kind of an uphill climb because there's a lot of tradition there. Well, it's been working for my family for all these years, so why should I change? There's that aspect, or this guy down the road, he's been doing it like this, and it's been working for me, so why should I change? So that's a if you're an ag tech company, you're trying to sell into this industry, that's kind of an uphill climb. But there's also, you've got to prove why. So return on investment, and there's kind of a rule of thumb. If I'm going to sell you this widget, what's my return on investment going to be, for whether it's your profitability, your yield, labor savings, whatever it is, should be like a 3-to-1 sort of return on investment. So if I sell you a widget for $100 an acre, you better be making $300 an acre on whatever that technology is. So ag technology, it had, right now, and as of summer of 2023, that the demand there has constrained from the investment side. And we've still seen a lot of interest from our folks because we're isolated from the Silicon Valley VC world,
Right.
which traditionally drives all that agriculture technology. But because we have investors of all walks of life all over the country, they're sort of insulated from whatever the ups and downs, although they will also, they don't want to lose money. Nobody wants to lose money when you invest. So they want to find these companies, these early stage companies that have a very strong chance of getting where they say they're going to get.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what trends or innovations are you observing in ag and ag tech that are exciting?
Yeah, I mean, I say on the ag side, on our production side, definitely we see more and more people saying they're doing regenerative agriculture, whatever that means to you or us or them or a consumer. It means a lot of things to a lot of people. It's not very well defined. It's not like, certified USDA organic. There's not a definition or a certification yet, but people think that that's a good thing. And we tend to agree. I mean, for us, especially working with some of the cattle folks that are doing regen grazing, holistic grazing, however you want to call it, it's taking care of the land and making the land better. We, unfortunately, there's an urban rural divide that's always been there and continues to grow, right? And most of the producers are in rural areas, most of the consumers are in urban areas, and that's just the way it is. So closing that divide is important. So we see, but these urban consumers, they hear things like regenerative and climate and these sorts of things, and they think, oh, that must be good. Here, I'm going to invest in that. I'm going to eat that label of food. I'm going to, those sorts of things. So the producers are sort of reacting to that. Some of them they believe firmly in what they're doing, and those are really the people we want to work with on that side. On the technology side, labor is always the big issue these days. It started with COVID. It started for a long time ago, but COVID made it worse. So anything that saves labor is probably technology that does that, and it can increase the bottom line is important. So whether that's robotics or precision agriculture, or anything that takes, this is a hard one because agriculture is a hands-on. No matter what you do, you're going to be working with your hands. You're going to be out in the fields. Even if you have robots, somebody's got to fix the robot. Somebody's got to put the robot in place. Somebody's, all those sorts of things. So it's going to change, but it's still going to be a very hands-on business, which is important. So getting people to recognize that technology is not going to magically make farming easy. We work with some indoor farmers And, that was sort of, we've had some success stories and some not success stories, but some of the not success stories were people that thought, oh, this is going to be easy. I'm inside. Yeah, you're
Right.
away from the elements, but hey, you're still constantly working, handling crops, and it's just a different sort of situation. So people need to understand that technology is not going to save them from hard work in most cases, and it's just going to change the nature of the work.
Yeah, great points. And then what about the future? What's your vision?
Yeah, so I personally would like to see less government intrusion in agriculture markets and
Amen.
less distortion of those markets.
Mhm.
Producers should grow what people want. And this is not to disparage corn growers who are producing great products. But that market is very, very distorted by USDA and policies and lobbies and things like that, to make people grow fuel that really nobody wants. Ethanol. I'm sure there's people that want ethanol, and I'm probably going to get in trouble, but people that drive cars don't want ethanol in their gas tanks. It's just not. It's not good for it. So, and meanwhile, all that capital is going to the wrong place. So we're capitalists. So we believe in the free flow of capital. That's what's made this country great. That's what's grown this company. It made this country. One of the things that made this country the best in the world. And whenever you incentivize people to do things that aren't driven by the market, you mess up the system. And so I'd like to see less government incentives to do things that are not market driven. That's me.
Yeah, I can get behind you on that. That's great. Great comments there. And what message or advice would you give to individuals who are considering investing in ag, maybe even retirees that just want to give back, or starting their own agribusiness? What's your advice?
Yeah, I mean, we have many of our investors are retired farmers or former farmers or still in the business. We were talking to a large animal vet who's one of our great investors. I would say, but if you're a new investor, especially you don't understand agriculture, kind of like where I was a decade ago, start to understand it. You are welcome to visit any of our producers. That's part of the thing. If you invest on a platform, we want you to go out and visit the farm. Our producers, they want to talk to the investors as well. So get out there and visit some farms. Because once you see it, what it's like in real life, it's obviously a much more real experience. And it also helps you understand, how challenging this business can be. So I'd get out there and educate yourself.
Yeah, great advice. Where can people find you?
So harvestreturns.com, start on the website. But of course, we got social media. We've got some great social media folks, and we're on all the Instas and the Twitter X and Facebook and everything else. But and I do a lot of these podcasts. I love doing podcasts. And so not only ag-centric podcasts, but investor-centric podcast. And one of the ways we find a lot of our investors is those podcasts. So you can look us up on Investor Podcast.
Awesome. And I have one last question for you. Why do you serve the industry this way? And what is it that you're most passionate about in doing this?
Yeah, for us, it's just keeping, agriculture is the oldest and most important industry. It's the industry that touches every single person on earth. Everyone has to eat. So we have to keep that viable, and we have to keep that, especially here in the United States. We have to keep producers profitable. If you look at our little mission statement and things, it's about, agriculture can be done profitably, and it should be done profitably. And that benefits both our investors and the producers.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today. Awesome conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Chrissy.
And thanks to all who are watching or listening. If you want to learn more, the links are provided in the show notes. Don't forget to subscribe to North American Ag Spotlight on YouTube, Rumble, Telegram channels. The podcast is available on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Listen Notes, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And you can always go to NorthAmericanAg.com to get all of the information. And if you liked the episode, I would love it if you shared it. Have a great day. Did you know that at NorthAmericanAg.com, we are committed to providing valuable resources for farms and agribusiness? Find your next podcast in the Best of Ag podcast library, delve into our on-demand webinar series, check out the latest in ag news, or treat yourself to a new hoodie or tee from our swag shop. Head over to our subscribe page to join our community and be the first to know about what's happening in the industry. North American Ag provides daily ag news and weekly podcasts covering ag tech, ag policy, new products, family, and faith. North American Ag gives farm families and ag professionals insight into what's happening in agriculture throughout North America. Ditch the mainstream media. Join North American Ag.